Do you know what the end of the world smells like? In 1979, it didn't smell like fire and brimstone. It smelled like gasoline. America was on its knees. Inflation was running at 14%. Imagine that. Every dollar in your pocket was losing value while you slept. It was like holding an ice cube in a warm room. You could watch your wealth melting away. People waited in gas lines for hours. Fistfights broke out at the pumps. The president, Jimmy Carter, went on television wearing a cardigan sweater and told Americans, "The dream is over. Turn down your thermostats. Put on a sweater. Lower your expectations." It was a crisis of confidence. The greatest superpower on earth looked pathetic. But in a greasy diner in Dallas, Texas, there was one man who wasn't scared. He was angry. He was a 300-pound oil tycoon, sitting alone, eating a hamburger with messy hands. His name was Nelson Bunker Hunt. He was the richest man on earth. And he was looking at the paper dollar in his hand with pure disgust. He didn't see money. He saw a lie. He saw a government that was printing paper to cover up its failures. He realized a truth that most people were too afraid to admit. Any currency that a politician can print will eventually go to zero. So, Bunker Hunt wiped his mouth with a napkin, walked to a payphone, and called his brother, William. He said, "We need to buy something real, something they can't print." "Gold?" his brother asked. "No," Bunker said. "They can ban gold. I want something the people need. I want silver." And then he said the words that would almost destroy the global financial system. "Let's not just buy some of it. Let's buy all of it." Welcome to the archives of financial warfare. Today we are telling the story of the boldest heist in economic history, the day two brothers tried to steal the global currency from the Federal Reserve. This is the silver squeeze. To understand this war, you have to understand the general. Nelson Bunker Hunt was not your typical Wall Street billionaire. His father, H.L. Hunt, was a legend who allegedly won his first oil well in a poker game. Bunker grew up with oil in his veins and gambling in his blood. He didn't wear Italian suits. He wore cheap polyester suits that were 2 sizes too small. He didn't eat at 5-star restaurants in Manhattan. He ate at greasy diners in Texas. He drove an old Cadillac filled with newspapers and trash. To the elites in New York, he looked like a confused grandfather who got lost on the way to church. They called him a Bubba. They laughed at him. But that was their mistake. Behind those thick black-rimmed glasses was the mind of a predator. Bunker Hunt hated the establishment. He hated the banks in New York. He hated the politicians in Washington. He hated the Federal Reserve. He believed they were a cabal of communists conspiring to destroy the American saver. In 1973, seeing inflation rise, Hunt bought his first batch of silver. But he didn't buy it like a trader. He bought it like a warlord. He flew 40 million ounces of silver to Switzerland in armed airplanes. He hired Texas cowboys to guard the vaults with shotguns. He told his brother, "I don't trust paper receipts. If you don't hold it, you don't own it." But 40 million ounces wasn't enough. Hunt looked at the map. He realized that silver was undervalued. Historically, the ratio of gold to silver was 16 to 1. But in 1979, it was nearly 50 to 1. Silver was cheap. It was useful. It was essential for photography, electronics, and medicine. And there wasn't enough of it. Hunt smiled. He saw the squeeze. But he needed more firepower. Even a billionaire couldn't corner the global market alone. He needed allies who hated the US dollar as much as he did. In a scene straight out of a spy movie, Hunt flew to the middle of the desert. He landed in Tehran and then Riyadh. He met with the most powerful sheikhs in the Middle East, princes of the House of Saud, the men who controlled the world's oil. Picture the scene: the fat Texan in his rumpled suit, sitting on a silk cushion across from men in white robes worth trillions. Hunt told them, "The Americans are paying you for your oil in dollars. But those dollars are becoming worthless trash. Why are you trading black gold for paper?" the Sheikhs listened. They were worried about inflation too. Hunt proposed an alliance, a secret brotherhood, the Silver Pool. Together, they would use their oil money to buy every ounce of physical silver they could find. They would create a new currency, a hard currency. They would force the Western world to pay them in metal, not paper. The Sheikhs agreed. They shook hands, and the buying began. In late 1979, orders started flooding into the COMEX exchange in New York. Massive buy orders. At first, the traders on the floor didn't panic. They just shrugged. It's just the Hunts gambling again. You see, the commodities market is a casino built on a lie. It's called fractional reserve. For every 100 ounces of paper silver traded on the exchange, there is maybe only 1 ounce of real silver in the vault. The banks sell naked shorts. They sell silver they don't have, assuming that nobody ever actually asks for the metal. It's a gentleman's agreement. You buy a contract, the price goes up, you sell the contract, you take the cash. Nobody takes the metal, but Bunker Hunt wasn't a gentleman. When his contracts expired, the bankers from Mokata Metals and Botch called him up. "Mr. Hunt, congratulations on your profit. We will wire the cash to your account. It's a fortune." Hunt paused on the phone. "No," he said, "I don't want your paper dollars." The banker was confused. "Excuse me? I want the metal. I want delivery." Panic. The blood drained from the banker's face. "Mr. Hunt, we don't have that much silver in the warehouse. Nobody takes delivery of 50 million ounces. It's logistically impossible." "That's not my problem," Hunt said. "Find it." And then the logistics operation began. This wasn't numbers on a screen anymore. This was heavy, physical reality. Hunt hired armored convoys. He chartered Boeing 707 cargo planes. Night after night, armed guards loaded millions of ounces of silver bullion onto planes in New York and Chicago and flew them to private vaults in Europe. He was draining the COMEX dry. He was taking the chips off the table and putting them in his pocket. By January 1980, the supply shock hit the streets. There was no silver left. The price went vertical. $5 an ounce, $10, $20. In a matter of weeks, it hit $30. Wall Street was bleeding. The big banks, the establishment, were on the wrong side of the trade. They had sold silver they didn't own. Now they had to buy it back at any price to deliver it to Hunt. They were trapped in a short squeeze of biblical proportions. Every time the price went up by $1, the banks lost hundreds of millions. But it wasn't just Wall Street. The mania hit Main Street. At $40 an ounce, America went insane. It was the gold rush of 1849, but for silver. People started ripping the fillings out of their teeth to sell the silver. Grandmothers were melting down antique tea sets that had been in the family for generations. Burglars stopped stealing TVs and stereos. They only wanted the silverware. In London, thieves ripped the silver crosses off church altars. And then, the most famous jewelry store in the world, Tiffany & Company, did something unprecedented. They took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. It wasn't to sell jewelry. It was to condemn Nelson Bunker Hunt. The ad read in bold letters, "We think it is unconscionable for anyone to hoard several $billion of silver and drive the price up so high that others must pay artificially high prices." Tiffany's was begging him to stop. The banks were begging him to stop. The Fed was begging him to stop. But Hunt didn't stop. By mid-January, silver hit $50 an ounce. On paper, the Hunt brothers were worth more than the entire gross national product of some European countries. They had the banks by the throat. They were 1 week away from bankrupting the entire financial establishment. But Bunker Hunt made one fatal mistake. He forgot who owned the casino. You can beat the dealer, you can beat the other players, but you cannot beat the house. In late January 1980, the establishment held a secret meeting. Paul Volcker, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the heads of the major banks, the board of the COMEX exchange. They gathered in a smoke-filled room in New York. The mood was terrified. If Hunt demanded delivery of more silver, the major banks on Wall Street would default. The entire U.S. financial system would collapse. Hunt would become the new king. So, they did what Goliath always does when David starts winning. They changed the rules of the game while the game was still being played. On January 21st, 1980, the COMEX exchange introduced Silver Rule 7. It was a rule specifically designed to kill the Hunt brothers. It said, from now on, you can only sell silver. You cannot buy new silver. Liquidation only. Think about that for a second. Imagine playing a game of poker and suddenly the dealer says, okay, from now on, you are only allowed to fold. You cannot raise. You cannot call. It was blatant manipulation. It was illegal. It was war, but it worked. Since nobody was allowed to buy, the price had nowhere to go but down. The buyers disappeared instantly. The price of silver crashed. $50, $40, $30. The bubble didn't burst naturally, it was assassinated. But the torture wasn't over. The establishment wanted blood. They didn't just want Hunt to lose, they wanted him destroyed. The Hunts had bought their silver on margin. They borrowed money to buy it. When the price crashed, the value of their collateral collapsed. The banks called in the loans. This is the dreaded margin call. Bunker Hunt picked up the phone at the Rosewood Hotel in Dallas. The voice on the other end wasn't polite anymore. It was a scream. Mr. Hunt, your account is underwater. We need $100 million by tomorrow morning. Or what? Hunt asked. Or we liquidate everything. Hunt didn't have the cash. It was all in silver. He tried to sell, but the market was frozen. He tried to call his friends in Saudi Arabia, but they stopped answering the phone. The alliance was broken. He was trapped in a burning building with no exits. Then came Silver Tuesday, March 27th, 1980. The price collapsed to $10 an ounce. The Hunt Empire, one of the greatest fortunes in American history, was vaporized instantly. They lost over $1 billion in a single day. To pay the debt, they had to sell everything. They sold the oil fields. They sold the racehorses. They sold the ancient Greek coin collection. Bunker Hunt, the man who wanted to break the Fed, ended up declaring personal bankruptcy. He went from being the richest man in the world to taking the subway in New York to attend his court hearings. At the congressional hearings that followed, a senator asked him, Mr. Hunt, you lost billions. Do you have any regrets? Hunt adjusted his thick glasses, looked at the cameras, and said famously, $1 billion isn't what it used to be. What is the lesson here? Was Bunker Hunt just a greedy gambler? A villain? No. He was right about inflation. He was right about the dollar. The dollar did lose 90% of its value in the decades that followed. But he was wrong about the system. He taught us the most dangerous lesson in finance. If you play in their casino, they can change the rules. Hunt relied on paper silver, futures contracts. He relied on leverage, margin. He relied on the rules of the exchange staying the same. He didn't own the silver, he owned a claim on silver. And claims can be canceled. Rules can be rewritten. Rule 7 proved that. This is why, in my own portfolio, I have a strict rule. If you can't hold it, you don't own it. Real wealth is not a number on a screen. Real wealth is physical gold in a vault only you can access. Real wealth is Bitcoin in a cold wallet where you hold the private keys. Real wealth is land with a title deed in your safe, because when the crisis comes, when the squeeze happens, the exchanges will close, the sell button will disappear, the rules will change, and only the people holding the physical asset will survive. Now, I have a challenge for you. It is time to audit your empire. This is the Physical Check Challenge. For the next 7 days, I want you to open your spreadsheet and look at your net worth. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write Paper wealth. This is everything that relies on a counterparty. Stocks held by a broker, money in a bank account, ETFs, futures, things that can be frozen, seized, or changed by a Rule 7. On the right side, write hard wealth. This is what you actually control: physical gold and silver, real estate, cash under the mattress, crypto in a hardware wallet. Look at the ratio. If 90% of your wealth is on the left side, you are vulnerable. You are playing in the casino, hoping the dealer doesn't get angry. Bunker Hunt was the richest man on earth, and they broke him. Do not let them break you. I am Victor. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Get your assets off the table. See you in the trenches.